parent judges. All right, is it all clear to everyone how this is going to work?
So don't leave after he announces, because we're going to have two parent judges.
Yeah, and then we're going to stay here, and I'd like us all to stay in the room while the teams go off and prep. And then they'll be back in 15 minutes, and we'll start the final round. After the final round is over, we're going to very quickly move these tables out of the way, and we're going to jump right into the awards ceremony. And we'll have a few announcements and things at that point. All right, clear? Yes, okay. Here we go. Scenario. All paper books have been eliminated. All of human literature is stored electronically. You realize that all books are being systematically rewritten. You can preserve them only by shutting down the internet and bringing business, medical services, and normal daily living to a stop. You choose literary integrity. The top two teams, Parli Plus and Parliamentary Debate, are from Parli, Gleason Randall, and from Touche, Smith Wendler. Would you guys come up here, please?
Please be quiet.
If I get tails, you guys will be off. Does that make sense? Heads, gov, tails, off. You guys will be off. Make sense?
Okay.
Heads it is.
Okay.
Here's the resolution copy. And you guys have 15 minutes. And Isaac.
Sorry. Elisa Randall.
All right then. I call the House to order and call upon the Honorable Prime Minister to deliver the first speech of the round not to exceed 7 minutes.
There are many great pieces of literature. And starting off with probably one of the first books you'll hear in this round of many is George Orwell's famous novel, which was a critique on society of 1984. And in this book, he was talking about when governments have control of literature and they have control of history, what they can do is essentially destroy truth. This is actually from the very book 1984, and it says, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." In today's debate resolution, we will be debating this scenario. All paper books have been eliminated. All of human literature is stored electronically. You realize that all books are being systematically rewritten. You can preserve them only by shutting down the internet and bringing business, medical services, and normal daily living to a stop. And we, as the government team, choose literary integrity. So one of the core values that we're going to be talking about in this round is this idea of destroying truth. that by destroying the literature, we are destroying the truth that is being held in those books. We will be doing this through two separate contentions, talking about the value of truth. And ultimately, that's what a lot of these arguments are going to be boiled down to, is this idea of preserving truth. Contention number one, preserving the value of truth. And so this is talking about how truth preserves life, it defines life, and it's really the core of our life. And without truth, we don't have a solid foundation for what to believe in. For example, if we don't know what is true, and everyone has a different relativism idea of truth, that is a shaky foundation. The impacts are numerous. The first one is basically that our identity is being lost. When we allow the government, in this case, to have control of history and to be controlling the books, the identity is lost. So, we as the government team decide to stop that, and we're going to choose literary integrity to preserve our culture. And this is important. We are supporting free thinking. We are supporting independent decisions. And we're going to be supporting the identity of our culture and building up what has been made for years preserved in these books, such as 1984 and several other great literary novels that have been preserved in the past. And we are saying, no, the government should not be allowed to rewrite these to fit their agenda. Now let's move into our second contention, and this is talking about basically life experiences that are explored in novels. Now novels can cover a variety of experiences dating back to early childhood or other things, and many important things are found in these books, and actually people sacrifice their lives oftentimes to write these books and to preserve this truth. Every book is written with a purpose, and when the government goes and rewrites that, we're losing that purpose. Subpoint A is actually that of history, and that is how we know who we are. When we read the history to know who we are. If we don't have the history, we don't know who we are as people. That preserves part of our identity. Another example under this is that of experiences. We learn from other people's experiences. That's one way how we can avoid having to make the same mistakes ourselves. It doesn't always work that way. And the impact to this is really sacrificing for a greater purpose. Now we do agree in the contention, or in this scenario, well, we would be preserving, we would have to shut down the internet, we would have to shut down business, we would have to shut down medical lives, or medical units, but we are doing this for the greater purpose. We are thinking long term. We're not thinking just a few 24 hours that people might have to, they have a cold or something, they'll just have to get over it. We are going for the greater purpose here. And actually we can see this in another novel, which is that of Fahrenheit 451. And this, it's one of my favorites too. And in this book, the novel was actually having these firefighters where they were burning books. Till all of a sudden the firefighter, his conscience started striking him, and he realized that if they had to be burning these books, there must have been something significant in those books. And the government did not want them reading these books because it promoted things like thinking, and thinking against the government, and possibly, well, if you can think, you might be able to overturn the government. So, by choosing literary independence, we are giving people back their independence to think and have leisure activities and the like. George Orwell also says that the most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of history. This is not what we stand for, and we stand for preserving truth and literary integrity in this way. Yes?
So you're saying that by shutting down the internet, it would destroy all the literature that's stored?
That's what the resolution has given to us, so that's what we're going to have to abide to in this round and in this resolution. Thank you for your time.
I thank the Honorable Prime Minister for her eloquent remarks and call upon the Leader of the Opposition to deliver a speech not to exceed 7 minutes.
Because shutting down the internet would not only have detrimental harm to the economy, the global economy, but also on innocent life and the pursuit of truth, I stand resolved that the internet should not be shut down in favor of literary integrity.
instead of responding line by line, I'm going to present a whole bunch of disadvantages to passing the government's plan of choosing literary integrity. So let's start with my first disadvantage, that this is the nuclear option. The nuclear option. My opponent agreed in her last speech that all literature is stored on the internet. All literature. Meaning shutting down the internet would not only kill the bad literature that's being rewritten, but as well as all of the literature that is good in the world as well. So shutting down the internet would destroy forever all literature. The references that all the books that my opponents referenced in her last speech, as well as the literature that is being rewritten presumably by the government. So that leads me to my second disadvantage, is that the government team is in a catch-22, kind of like a double bind. If they pass their plan, they not only destroy the incorrect literature, but also the good literature. But then you could presume, perhaps, that literature isn't being stored on the internet. Literature is being stored on maybe a hard drive or something like that. So shutting down the internet wouldn't destroy all literature, but that if they start to promote that, that would be non-resolutional. So really passing the government plan harms all literature and the pursuit of truth, because it destroys all of the literature that is being stored on the internet. Let's go into some more disadvantages about how shutting down the yes, I'll take it.
Doesn't the resolution provide us with the assumption that by shutting down the internet is the only way that we can preserve the literature?
Shutting down the internet is the only way to destroy the incorrect literature, but the resolution does say that all human literature is stored electronically. That's what it says right there. All human literature is stored electronically, meaning that if the internet was shut down, it would destroy all human literature. My opponent's plan not only harms, as we'll see in the harms of the future, disadvantages that I will bring up, but it also destroys their idea of truth as well. Yes?
You would agree that just because something is electronic, it doesn't mean that it's on the internet, correct?
Right, and that was actually what I was just about to get into. If it's electronic but not on the internet, that means if they're promoting that they're not destroying all literature because it's not actually on the internet, that would be non-resolutional. The resolution says that all literature is on the internet, meaning that the government plan has to be destroying all literature. Now, if literature was on a hard drive, which would definitely be the best option, then it wouldn't be on the internet and it wouldn't have to be destroyed, but the government's plan cannot support this option. So let's move into a couple of disadvantages, several disadvantages of why destroying the internet would not only be detrimental to literature and to the pursuit of truth, but also to the rest of the United States economy, and then also in innocent life. The first disadvantage here is of national security. Right now, a lot of our national security technology is dependent on the internet and the technology that our internet provides. And if we were to shut down the internet, that would leave the United States as well as other nations in the world completely vulnerable to attack. And as we see right now, the global landscape is extremely in turmoil, and is absolutely necessary to protect our security. Yes.
Isn't another assumption within the resolution that this is a temporary stop, not forever shutting the internet?
Perhaps the resolution doesn't necessarily say that, so you can assume either way, but either way it would leave the United States vulnerable, and I can tell you that North Korea or Russia would love to jump on the chance where the United States defenses were down. So even if it is temporary, it would be an extreme challenge to the United States' security. My second disadvantage is that shutting down the internet would bring financial chaos to the United States. Once again, a lot of the United States economy is based on the internet. Right now, actually, the entire internet global economy is at $4.2 trillion. If that was shut down, it would shut down hundreds of businesses, and it would destroy the entire infrastructure of our economy, which is almost entirely in the cloud or stored on the internet. So not only would you be destroying all literature that exists, but also it would be destroying the economy of the entire globe, and it would bring financial chaos to the entire world. Another disadvantage here is that shutting down the internet would cost innocent lives. A lot of technology medical technology is based in the internet. There are pacemakers that are connected to the internet, and if the internet was shut down, then it would shut down people's ability to stay alive, because that's totally reliant on the technology of the internet. So shutting down the internet wouldn't just harm, someone with a cold. It would actually cost lives, and that's why it's so detrimental. Now, if we can take this a step further, the resolution seems like it's kind of in the future, because it's a scenario where all books have been. Yes, I'll take your question. haven't people risked their lives to preserve truth in these novels?
Absolutely, but that's definitely a minority. We're looking at the entire globe and the entire world of medical technology, not just a couple of people who are well studied in literature. So back to what I was saying about how this resolution seems to be in the future. Now, if we were in the future, I could logically make the assumption that a lot of more people would be dependent on internet technology for medical care. There's actually a type of robots that's being developed right now that we can feasibly imagine having in the future called the Da Vinci surgery robot, which is basically surgery that's happening right here, and the doctor is on the other side of the world. It's all connected over the internet, meaning if the internet was shut down and we were in the future using this technology, then that means everybody would having the surgery would die at the time that the internet is cut off. And this is an extremely large harm. We cannot risk shutting down the internet. Not only would it destroy all literature, but it would lose a huge amount of human life. And so moving into my final disadvantage is that it would harm education. Education right now is extremely reliant on the internet. Once again, we're taking advantage of the opportunities that the internet provides as far as spreading information. And so not only would shutting down the internet harm literature and the pursuit of truth, but it also decrease the ability of people to have an education, to have access teachers or online manuals. Just would harm overall a broad ability to search for knowledge and find freedom in that knowledge, as so many people do. And so we see that clearly the government team is in a double bind here, because shutting down the internet would not only harm innocent life, risk financial instability and national security harms, but it would also destroy literature and destroy the very pursuit of truth that they are promoting. And that's why the resolution must not be passed.
I thank the honorable leader of the opposition for her eloquent remarks and call upon the member of the government to deliver a speech not to exceed 7 minutes.
Everyone ready? One day, I have a little 4-year-old nephew, and he asked me, Auntie Caitlin, why are we here? And although a 4-year-old asked, it's the question of what really is the purpose of life? What really makes it worth living? And one of the big answers to that is the idea of truth. We are able to have hope in the world because we are the idea that there is a set truth that can never be changed. But what we see right now is when all books are being tampered with, we see that truth becomes relative, and we lose the purpose of life. So that being said, let's first of all go into some responses to what they said, and then I'm going to be bringing up a third contention for the government team. So first of all, to her first point, when she talked about how it's a nuclear option, saying this was very extreme, I have 2 responses to this. My first is electronic versus internet. Now we have to remember the resolution said that it is electronically stored, not that it is on the internet. So which means that if we destroy the internet, we will not be destroying the books. But then my second response here is out of a nuclear situation. Now we have to remember that the resolution has given us an ultimatum. Now we either have to sacrifice this or sacrifice this. And we have decided that the integrity of literature, which leads to the integrity of a nation, is worth sacrificing our daily lives. So now going back to the second point she said we're destroying all literature. And I have 2 responses. My first is the resolution ultimatum. Again, we have to remember that this is not saying that if we destroy this, then that means this is also destroyed. It's saying we have to pick one to abandon. We are not saying that they have to coincide. But then my second response is to make a choice. Now let's remember the value that my partner and I set at the beginning of the Prime Minister's speech, which is about how we are needed to value truth, which the opposition team did not contest. So it still stands today that truth is the highest value in today's debate round. So now going down to their disadvantages, first of all, the disadvantage one of national security. I'm going to have 3 responses to this. My first is all affected. Now we have to remember the fact that all books are being tampered with. This means that all science books, all history books, all religious books, anything that is a book is being tampered with. And that includes books that might have information about our own national security. Now going on to my second response, and that would be not permanent. Now they're talking about how this is a permanent situation, but nowhere in the resolution and nowhere have my partner and I claimed that this is a permanent fix. We're saying as of right now, this is what we must choose, and we choose the integrity of literature. But now going down to my third response, and that would be the national integrity. Now one thing my dad always likes to tell me is that what's the point of protecting a nation if the nation is not worth it? Now the answer here is that if the nation has lost its integrity, then what is the point of being a nation in the first place? Now going on to the second disadvantage, chaos, and they talk about an economic chaos here. My response again is all books, finance books, educational books, anything that was a written record is being tampered with and is being destroyed, and we are putting a stop to this. Going on to the third disadvantage, that of losing innocent lives. My first response to this is gone anyways. Those medical books, those people that talk about all of the different ways in which we can save lives, they're being tampered with to be controlled by the government to have selective life saving. That is what can happen with the idea of allowing this to happen. But my second response is again all books. Now we're not just talking about, say, a history book, it is much more than that. But now finally, going on to the fourth disadvantage of education. I'm going to be having two responses to this. My first is education is tampered. Now, one thing you learn is the way to control a nation is not to control the old generation, it's control the new generation. So when you tamper with educational books, which causes those children to basically be specialized in which you force them and teach them to believe false lies, that only means that you are taking away from the quality education that the opposition team supports so much. But then my second response to this would be that of Hitler. Now let's look at the fact that Hitler knew for a fact that destroying books and destroying literature was the best way to take away the culture of a country. It was take away the integrity and to destroy it. And that is what we saw happen with Hitler. So with the time remaining, let's go ahead and bring in a third contention for the government team. And you can really kind of just put this anywhere you have room at the moment. So the contention is all gone anyways. Now, they're trying to talk about how the things that we have to give up are so important, but when we are destroying the integrity of books, all of those things that they are valuing are going to be gone anyways. So my subpoint A underneath this is integrity. Now, truth and integrity is the highest value in today's debate round. So no matter how we look at that, we need to ask the question is which team is giving the best option to preserve integrity. And we can see that preserving the integrity and culture of a nation is exactly the best way to do it. But my subpoint B underneath this is the incentive to progress. This is the incentive to learn, the incentive to build, the incentive to make things better is being taken away because we are taking away the history of success, the history of the United States winning wars, the history of people making it through the hard times. That is gone, simply because we are tampering with things that we should not. Now going down to my subpoint C, and that would be losing power to make things better. Now when we put the integrity of a nation in the power of a government or in the power of a higher person that should not be controlling our history or our culture, it makes it so this way we lose the ability to change things for ourselves and for our futures. Because we are putting our past in control of them, and hence we are putting our future and our present in control of others. But then this leads down to my impact. My first impact is the records are gone. Now literature, electronically or not, is a written record. It is a written record of our past. It can be a written record of our prediction of our future if we want. But in either case, that written record, which holds so much integrity in it, is gone. And this leads to my second impact, and that being no reason to life. If there is no truth, then there is no reason to life. Simply because of the fact that when there's no truth, there is no biblical truth. There is no truth in science. There's no truth in history. There's no reason to live. And so what we can see here today is that while, yes, for a temporary amount of time, we might be giving up minute things, in reality and in the long run, we will be preserving them because we preserve the integrity of a culture, integrity of a nation, and the integrity of the people. Thank you.
I thank the honorable member of the government for her eloquent remarks and call upon the member of the opposition to close out the constructive portion of the round in a speech not to exceed 7 minutes.
I love books, I love stories, and a little bit more I love TV shows. Now, if I love TV shows a little bit less, I might have spent more time working on Parli. Now, there's one TV show in particular, the TV show Revolution, which illustrates the storyline of a culture that loses access to electricity. Now this culture degrades in an instant. Planes fall out of the sky. Medical research and advances are lost, all from a lack of power. Now what the government team is advocating is very similar to this, that society will cease to function the moment we cut the internet. So I'm going to be going on addressing their case, providing some refutation to that, if I can read my own flow, hopefully. Then move on to the disadvantages that my partner brought up and refer to those as well. So let's start off with the value that they presented this debate on, the value of truth. Now, I love truth. As an LDer, I'd argue that truth is subjective. But let's go for another aspect. Truth is not dependent on literature. Again, that is, truth is not dependent on literature. Now, truth is a little bit subjective, but it is not dependent upon the literature of a culture. Rather, what we make it to be, what we as society, in the status quo, in the present, define truth to be. It is not based off of the past. It can be influenced by the past, but it should not be solely based or derived from the past. For we live in the present, and the future is so full of opportunity. So let's move on to the second response, is that innocent life is highest. Again, innocent life is highest. Yes, I'll take your first question.
Going back to what you talked about, how society defines truth. Now, how does society record what it decides truth is?
Well, quite honestly, yes, through literature. However, truth is not based on literature, rather recorded by it. That's the fact that I'm trying to aim here for. So now let's look to the second response, that of innocent life. Now, innocent life must be upheld. We must protect innocent life in order for us to be able to enjoy this literature in the first place. If 90% of the world were to be destroyed based on this option, the majority of the world wouldn't be around to even value this literature in the first place. Innocent life is highest, and that's what we, as the opposition, are advocating to protect. So let's move on to their contention one. They stated that it's essentially presenting the value of truth. Now, my response is that the population is being lost. Again, the population is being lost. Truth is very important, and as an LDer, though, innocent life is highest, because we cannot enjoy the value of truth without having life in the first place. Life is foundational, life has to be built upon, and truth comes after we have life in the first place. So now, because of this, I have 2 points under this, that when we shut down the internet, we're trampling human rights. Again, we're trampling human rights. By shutting down the internet, access to all these things, by stinting advances in business and medical services, we're stopping the advance and the saving of valuable human life based on the application of saving literature. These innocent lives are being lost, and it's trampling their human lives in the process. Yes, I'll take your second question.
You would agree that the internet has become one of the most popular tools to invade another person's privacy, correct?
Yes, I would. However, on top of that too, the internet has also become a useful tool to save lives, to add medical, to protect medical, to protect lives. A little nervous since everyone's staring at me right now. But on top of that too, with all of that, the internet has become foundational to our society. When we want to learn something new, we turn to the internet. It's very important, and it's important for upholding human rights as well, because we're protecting innocent life at its foundation. Now, this is my second response, that it is not moral. Again, it is not moral. It is not moral for us to decide in this room that shutting down the internet and the lives that would be lost because of it is not something moral. We have to protect innocent life. It has to be a major consensus in order for this to happen. Otherwise, we're trampling upon rights. How would you like it if I said your life isn't worth saving because there's something greater at stake, or because there's something else at stake in that instance? Yes, I'll take your third question.
Is it moral for a person to brainwash someone's children and violate their rights?
Can you please restate that?
For tampering for education, for example, is it moral for a person to tamper with books, hence brainwashing an entire generation?
I don't believe so, but nowhere in the resolution did it state that this tampering is actually bad in the first place. So let's move on to the second contention. According to life experiences in morals, essentially. My response is that we're destroying our culture. By shutting down the internet, by stinting business and medical services, we're shutting down a culture and putting them in jeopardy. An article that my teammate found when we were researching says up to 90% of life in the United States could be lost based on shutting down the internet. That national security is at risk based on a study from the University of Texas. All of this, we're putting ourselves at danger. My partner brought up that this is the nuclear option, and it is absolutely the nuclear option because we're at risk for nuclear war. When I was studying TP, they always said, push for nuclear war if you can, and this is something that we actually can, because when the internet is shut down, they can launch nukes at us. Yes, so make the fourth question.
If you're saying this is a world without electricity, how will they fire nuclear missiles?
If you're advocating for a world without internet, not a world without electricity. That was merely an example. So without the internet, nukes can still be launched. There's still, I'm sure, a red button that you can push. Now, against their contention three, they said it's all gone anyway. My response is that it's the extent of what remains. Again, the extent of what remains. We have to look at what remains and if that's worth saving, as well as what we're trying to preserve right now. We're trying to preserve innocent human life, and by shutting down the internet, we're putting more in jeopardy than we would by allowing this tampering to continue. Again, and the resolution has nowhere stated that this tampering is bad. It could actually be beneficial, something that the government team has not presented. So let's move on to the disadvantages now. I won't be taking this question. I have to get through quite a few disadvantages because I'm on one point. So now, according to now let's look at the electronic versus internet. Now, my response to this is that we're losing access. Again, losing access. If these things are being electronically stored, then we're losing access to them because we have to properly access them to the internet. But if this isn't the case, my second response is that there are other alternatives. Now, when there's something on the internet that I want to record, I can typically take a screenshot of it. There are other alternatives than shutting down the entire internet. This is quite literally the nuclear option. Now, because of this, there's a quote that's been floating around my head for this whole round, and I really want to use it, that when someone holds a gun to your head, there's more than just one option. You can disarm them, you can talk them down, you can do so much more. This is one alternative. We have not explored others, therefore other alternatives could be safer to uphold truth as well as innocent life in the process. So let's move down to I'm going to be grouping all of the responses against our disadvantages by saying that there are going to be permanent repercussions. Again, permanent repercussions. Now, by shutting down the internet, there will be permanent repercussions of this happening. Life will never be the same because life has been destroyed. Innocent life has been trampled upon. Economies will collapse, businesses will fall, and society as we know it, its structure will disintegrate. There will be permanent repercussions. Society as itself will degrade because of this. Because we shut down the internet, because we lose access to all these things, even momentarily, it's going to cause more harm than it will for the future. Thank you very much.
I thank the honorable member of the opposition for his eloquent remarks and call upon the leader of the opposition to deliver the first rebuttal speech of the round, not to exceed 5 minutes, reminding her that while new examples are welcome, no new arguments are not.
I'm going to be boiling this round down into several main voting issues showing that by shutting down the internet, not only would it destroy the search for truth, but also destroy the foundation for our society and the foundation for the protection of innocent life. So let's start out with the voting issue that destroying the internet would destroy innocent life. And this is bringing through the ideas that a lot of our technology for security, for defense, for surgery is based in the internet. The idea that surgeries can be carried out through the internet, and shutting the internet down would break that ability for surgeons to protect the life of their people, that they're healthy. It is absolutely essential to not shut down the internet so that life can be preserved and people can even exist into the future to search for truth and to enjoy literature itself. And so that's why absolutely the internet should not be shut down, because innocent life is the most important and the foundation for everything else. Moving into my second voting issue, that shutting down the internet would destroy the search for truth. And this is going back to the resolution. We see that the all human literature is stored electronically, meaning that the good literature, the tampered with literature, which may be good or bad, all of it is on the internet. So not only would shutting down the internet destroy business, national security, but it would also destroy literature itself. And this is not the best option. This is what the government team has to support. Bypassing the resolution, shutting down the internet would eliminate all literature globally, and this is definitely not what we want to propose. So the idea here is that this is not the best option, because it would destroy the search for truth that is necessary and that comes through literature. Another voting issue that I'd like to pull through here is that truth isn't even dependent on literature. Literature is definitely an important part of that, but you don't need to have books in order to know what is right and what is wrong. It does not culminate or have its existence in and from literature itself. Truth is dependent on action, not necessarily reading words on a page. And that's why shutting down the internet is a worse idea than destroying literature, because innocent lives will be lost and they won't even be able to go further and live and find out what truth is or act in a way that helps other people. And that's definitely paramount at the end of the day, is that innocent life must be preserved. and showing that shutting down the internet would not only destroy the good literature and the bad literature, but it would also destroy the ability to pursue truth or write new literature in the future if people choose to do so. And so that's why absolutely the scenario of this resolution would be extremely detrimental. Like my partner said, this is not the moral option. This is not the best way to go ahead and support my opponent's value of upholding truth, because it's absolutely paramount that innocent lives would not be lost. Another voting issue here is that destroying the internet destroys the foundation of culture. And this is something that's absolutely essential, because culture doesn't find its entire basis in literature. Culture is so much more. It's based in the economy, in its security and stability, and also in actions of people, of innocent lives, of doctors, and of people who just exist in the everyday world that don't depend on literature. And that's showing that if you shut down the internet, it shuts down the infrastructure, the entire ability to support the foundation of our society that supports the search for truth in general. There wouldn't, if you shut down the internet, there wouldn't even be a world to enjoy the literature if the literature does remain after all. And so all of these reasons show that it's absolutely essential to keep the internet up. Even, and now my opponents might point out that the internet might be shut down for only a small amount of time, but even then, innocent life would still be lost on a broad scale. Remember, this resolution is potentially in the future where even more of our lives are dependent on the internet, even more of our economy, even more of our infrastructure and for education, showing that it is absolutely essential that even for a short amount of time, the internet must not be shut down, because it is the foundation for the existence and the ability to lead our lives on a daily basis. And so that's why, once again, it's absolutely essential that the internet stay up, even if it's for a short amount of time, because it supports the search for truth. It wouldn't destroy all literature overall. It supports national security, the ability to protect ourselves with the technology that's based in the internet. It supports the ability to have an economy, to have work, to be able to communicate and to collaborate and to spread wealth in a beneficial way. And most importantly, supporting the internet supports innocent life. People that would not be able to go forward and search for truth if the internet was shut down, because they wouldn't have the ability to continue living. So that's why it's absolutely paramount that the internet has to come first, has to be prioritized in order to preserve all of these values.
I thank the Honorable Leader of the Opposition for her eloquent remarks and call upon the Prime Minister to deliver the final speech of the round, not to exceed 5 minutes, reminding her that while new examples are welcome, no new arguments.
Here.
Now imagine that you are Winston. You're working in the Ministry of Truth, you're working for the government, and you notice that books, history, literature, all books are being tampered with. And you know that the government is tampering with it, and you know that the future generation, which is going to be learning from this, future education, you know they're going to have a twisted view. And you have two choices. You can do something about it, or you can do the safe thing, the normal response, and not do anything and allow for the government to continue doing this. Now, we hope that you as the judge would choose to preserve truth and to preserve integrity. And I'm going to be doing this by showing you 3 voting issues about why we need to preserve truth and integrity. After all, a society without truth and integrity is not even worth preserving at all. Now let's move into the first voting issue, and this is that of a temporary stop. Now, one assumption we have to keep in mind is that if other countries still have national security, even without the internet, this is a worldwide ban on the internet, then we as the US would still have our security as well. After all, we have the best military in the world. We have other means besides just the internet that we can rely on. And here's the other thing. If we lose the internet, everyone else loses the internet as well. And even this idea of surgeries and high-tech surgeries, those are very few. And in the worst-case scenario, we're just going to have to revert to older means. What did we do before the technology? That's what we're going to have to do. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that we're shutting down the internet. We're not losing electricity. So your generators, your lights, they're still going to be working. And the other thing we have to keep in mind is that internet is a pleasure. Truth is fundamental and innate. Now, the second voting issue we're going to be moving into is that of robotic citizens. If the government control what we think, what we know, And if the government control exactly what we're reading and what we're knowing, they're really robotic and moving towards, they're choosing what we think about things. And as my partner talked about, the most important generation is the young generation. And that would be the generation learning from, well, this twisted novels. And that is not a good thing. See, truth is a fundamental thing. But by allowing the government to move around and twist it, that's leading to a subjective truth. And that's what happens when truth is being shifted. And again, internet is pleasure. If you had to go a day without the internet, I'm going to tell you, you are going to live. Now, our third and final voting issue, and the most important voting issue, especially since it hasn't been directly attacked, is that we are preserving truth and we're preserving integrity. They've talked about innocent lives and national security, but they have not directly responded to why preserving truth would or would not be a bad thing. And that is what we are upholding, because truth is innate, and that is something that actually everyone here in this room can relate to. Also, history is written, and we have to keep these written records. And even books, like they've contested subjective truth that can just be found, or truth can be found not throughout books. That's true, but there are even religious books for whatever religion that you believe in. Those are often recorded in books, and that's how they're passed down for several years. Truth is for life. So if your life is based on shifting truth, or if your life is based on what the government wants you to think, that's not a life worth living. And if you want to vote for that, you can vote for the opposition team. But if you vote for the government team, what you're allowing is for fundamental truth and allowing for people to learn and to learn for themselves what truth is by reading all kinds of different books, even books that may contradict each other, and allowing people to think for themselves and allowing the individual liberties to preserve our culture and to preserve truth and integrity. Thank you.
Good job.